Hi, welcome back to another episode of Leadership Lenses. This is our second ever live episode. My guest today is Rabbi Jeremy Stern, also known as Jeremy, who is the Director of Partnerships at CauseMatch. Basically, Jeremy's job is to make sure that if you're a school or organization and you'd like to run a crowdfunding campaign, you make as much money as possible and you fall into as few pitfalls as possible. You learn as quickly as possible what to do, how to do it. I'll say from my end, just about every school that I work with does some form of CauseMatch, charity, DIY, some form of crowdfunding campaign, but they range between raising $30,000 a year to raising $2 million a year, and that has nothing to do with the school's budget, right? So I've got schools with double-digit millions of annual budget raising $30,000 on their CauseMatch, and I've got schools with a $5 million annual budget raising $2 million. So the reason I invited Jeremy, other than he is a good guy, I like him and respect his work, and I do particularly respect what CauseMatch does and how they do it, so I'll put that out there. But I invited Jeremy to help get a sense of, okay, like, what are the do's and don'ts? Before we get into that, let me just pause and ask Jeremy if you can give us the 30 seconds of how you got to CauseMatch, because you were a development director, you were an executive director, you were a development director, and now you are on the crowdfunding platform side. So give us the 30-second background.
Sure. Thanks so much, Barry. So I have been at CauseMatch as the Director of Partnerships for almost 5 years, working with nonprofits and nonprofit consultants in strategic crowdfunding campaigns. For 15 years before that, I worked in nonprofits. I was the executive director of a small organization for many years, for almost a decade. And after that, I worked for some mid-sized organizations based in Israel as a director of development, doing fundraising primarily in North America from Israel and traveling a lot. So 15 years doing that inside and now working with organizations in their campaigns. And I got to CauseMatch because I was a client for several years. I loved working with them, and eventually I turned to Joseph Bornstein, who's our CEO and founder, and I said, "Hey, Joseph, I've loved working with your team, and I love how forward-thinking CauseMatch is about philanthropy and fundraising. I'd love to explore working more closely together."
And you made the sale.
Yeah, exactly.
You absolutely made the sale. So be careful. Jeremy is a very talented salesperson. He doesn't see anybody listening. So you can make your own judgments. Let me just throw out to begin with. I'm a school. I'm running a typical mid-size, let's say 500 kid, $8-9 million a year annual budget. And my annual campaign is $2 million a year. Up until now, I've been doing it old school. I've had my dinner, my speakers, pretend there's no crowdfunding platform. And I turn to you and I say, okay, I'm thinking about this. Maybe even I'm in, right? You don't have to make a sale. I'm in, I'm using CauseMatch, but what's going to make the difference between whether I raise $30,000 or whether I raise $300,000? What do I need to know?
Great question. So once you're already using CauseMatch, because that already means that you have a suite of fundraising tools that are powerful and can enable you to be more effective in your fundraising, then what really makes or breaks the difference is whether or not you're working with us, not just on the technology side, but also on the strategy side. We provide both the platform as well as the fundraising strategy, strategic coaching for campaigns, and that makes all the difference.
Okay, so I believe that it's not the technology, right? Anybody who's been through the ranks of teaching and you've done your smart boards and your boards and your everything, iPads 101, devices, bring your own device, leave your device at home, put your device somewhere in between, that we've done all that and it doesn't matter. Actually, one of the most fascinating research articles I ever read on introducing a new technology into a school was a fierce debate around the introduction of the ballpoint pen. Because fountain pens produce certain skills, a certain finesse, a certain care that you can just throw to the winds when you're dealing with a ballpoint. And this was a major debate in the 70s, right? Wow. So, and not that long ago. So leave the technology entirely aside for a moment. I'm a head of school. I've been raising some money. I'm pretty good at this. And I've got a development director who's also pretty good at this. And assume we ignore your advice. right? What are the top 2 or 3 mistakes we usually make that leaves us short of our goal or short of what our goal could be?
Right, a great question. So the types of campaigns that we do primarily are peer-to-peer campaigns. We kind of interchange those terms, peer-to-peer and crowdfunding, but the idea is that it's ambassador-driven fundraising, where especially in a school, you're going to work with the community around the school. So that's the leadership of the school, the faculty, but primarily the parent body, sometimes the students and alumni, and really try to excite them and activate them to serve as fundraising ambassadors for the school. And really what will make or break that difference of the success in the campaign is how are you onboarding, exciting, driving, empowering those fundraising ambassadors to serve as effective fundraisers for the school, to serve
Okay,
as
so let me
for
pause
school
you for a
funds.
second
Yeah.
because I know that in my 10 plus years as the head of school, and everyone I deal with gets the following complaint from their development directors. Let's say we have 600 donors to our annual campaign. I'm the development director. I make 500 of those solicitations. The head of school makes 50. And then amongst the other 50 solicitors we have, they each make one. And as a development director, I'm like, what? I'm going to invest all this effort in people who don't know what they're doing, and maybe they'll make an ask, or I can take all that same time, energy, save myself some frustration, and just make the asks. And maybe I'll bring somebody along with me to a meeting, but like I'm leading it as a development director or as the head of school, and we're not leaving this to the amateurs. So what do you say when a school says that to you?
Yeah, great question. Donors that your fundraising ambassadors are bringing in, you're typically not asking them to solicit your $5,000 annual donor to renew their gift for the annual campaign this year. Rather, they are really a force multiplier, and the idea is for them to bring in lots of new support for the school. So if you have 600 annual donors, we want to double that, right? We want to bring 600 new donors to your school, where the average gift from those donors is between $100 and $200. So that's going to be another $60,000, $120,000 for your school through this campaign.
Okay, so I'm just going to reference, for those of you watching, I'm making a triangle with my fingers,
Okay.
which is the reference for our giving pyramid, right? And giving pyramid, we typically see sometimes follows the Pareto 80-20, sometimes it's 90-10, sometimes it's anywhere in the middle, but you have the most donors giving at the low level. You have fewer and fewer and fewer giving at a higher level. But when you look at the funds, right, the actual money, the revenue, you'll often have somewhere around 80-90% of your revenue or more from your top 10% of donors. I mean, some schools I work with are like, they're blessed with 2 or 3 mega donors. So when you look at the numbers, it's 95% of your revenue from 3 families, and the other 5% from 600.
It's a blessing, but also a curse in disguise, right?
Yes.
Because
So
you lose one of those donors and you've lost a tremendous piece of your fundraising pyramid, right?
Okay, so let me pause you.
Yeah.
It's not that you lose the donor. It's that you do whatever in the world you need to not lose the donor, which often causes you to make really bad decisions about lots of things because you're completely dependent on that donor. So, absolutely.
I mean, or I could think of a client who worked with us that was supported by one major donor who tragically died very, very early, and then all of that donor has a bunch of children, and now the children have the inheritance, and that donor is no longer writing the $3 million annual check to the institution. Literally had that campaign a few months ago. They went from one donor to suddenly we need to have 2,000 donors.
Got it. So let's say I am in that case where hopefully nobody's dying, right? We're doing okay. We're in a relatively balanced, but I do have my 600 donors.
Yeah.
And most of my funds are coming from the top 50 or 60.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, I turn back to you and I say, okay, so we'll get another $650 donors. 600 times 50 is?
600 times 100, but let's say $60,000.
Okay, so 600 times 100, we've got $60,000. Thank you for doing that math. Is it worth it? I'm going to have to hire a $60,000 a year employee to run this thing. And so I'm getting $60,000. It doesn't seem like it's worth the effort.
Yeah, so you typically would not need to hire someone separate to run a campaign like this. vast majority of our clients have the capacity to run the campaign, especially because
what's the investment to reward ratio?
Because it's also like we're typically working with clients for about 2 months before their campaign, and we're meeting with the client twice a week, right? And often you want like a core group of 2 to 5 leaders who are driving the campaign forward, and that could be board members, that could be the head of school, the development director. So it's a piece of what they're doing. But I actually want to touch on something that you said you were talking about before, which is there are 600 donors that you have. These campaigns are a fantastic way for you to segment and resolicit those donors and actually drive them, spur them, and inspire them to not just renew their gifts, but increase their gifts. Because what you can do in these campaigns, we're called CauseMatch, but not all campaigns are matched campaigns, but you could create a matching fund within your campaign, and you can create that fund by soliciting your larger annual donors and saying, will you pool your $50,000, $100,000, $250,000 annual gifts into a matching fund for this campaign? I like to say, some people will say, what do you mean that donor is going to give in any case, right? I like to say the following. 2 things are guaranteed in life, right? Death and taxes. Your donor,
we talked about death.
Right, exactly. We talked about death. Your donor's annual gift is not one of those things that's guaranteed. And so utilizing this campaign to concretize that gift, right, and to put teeth into it, right, into the ask, and to nail down that gift and say, we're turning to you to create this matching fund to inspire others to give. And last year you gave $36,000, and we're so grateful. And this year, to create the fund, we're asking you for a gift of $50,000, right? Like the moves management that you can do within the campaign itself in soliciting those major donors is also powerful. So it really becomes a tool to solicit those larger donors over the course of the year.
So let me pause. I just want to note a few things you said which are crucial and often not thought of, right? Sometimes our fundraising is still Wild West. It's like, hey, I know you, you know, hey, can you do? And I've dealt with so many schools, which you have as well, where they don't even get signed pledge agreements. Then God forbid someone dies, or you need to tell the bank what your asset situation is, and you don't have anything to back it up, which is really unfortunate. What I hear you saying is, hey guys, forget about CauseMatch or any other platform. Take a strategic approach to your campaign.
Absolutely.
Right? Do your market segmenting. If you don't know what those words mean, I don't either. Segment, right? Who are your top, medium, low donors? Who are the donors that you can move forward? Where are the donors within their donor life cycle? Because I don't think anybody's guaranteed, but some are much less guaranteed than others. Your onboarding, your midlife, your legacy gifts. And from my perspective, that's enough, right? Then without using CauseMatch, the fact that CauseMatch exists makes me be strategic, thoughtful about my campaign, and I've done that. So I just want to note that's great, and I'm not saying don't use CauseMatch.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I want to add on to what you're saying, which is we were just talking about major donors, but even your mid-tier donors, your donors who typically, let's say they're giving $1,800 a year or $5,000 a year, which obviously is larger than your annual, than your typical crowdfunding gift, right? It's larger than a $180 gift. So you should also solicit those donors in the context of the campaign. And ask them to renew their gifts and say that we're asking you what we do strategically in these campaigns is a soft launch, which is about the 2 weeks before the hard launch of the campaign, the 36, 48 hours where you have the big public push of the campaign. You have a soft launch where you're starting to include some initial gifts in the campaign to create momentum within the campaign and benchmark generous gifts in the campaign to benchmark it for other prospective donors. And you turn to your $5,000 donor and your $1,800 donor and say, would you please give to the campaign this year in order to create momentum, inspire others to give, show that this is a winning cause, and help this campaign be successful. So it's also a way to solicit those mid-tier donors as well.
Okay. So what you're saying really reminds me of the way the old school Federation Super Sunday used to go. I know many federations still do this, but I'll tell you, in Cleveland, for 10 years, I went to Super Sunday. The moment I walked in, somebody pulled me off to the side When I was young, it was, off to just the side of the room. And then when they thought I should be, perhaps stretching more, they took me into an actual little conference room on the side and said, "You're here at Super Sunday. We appreciate it. We'd love for you to go and spend the next hour calling people, but you can't call people if you haven't made a gift.
Right.
So let's talk about your gift. And last year you gave X, and this year we'd like to give you X plus. We'd like to see if you would, stretch for X plus Y." Right. And then you did that typically, and then you were a lot more motivated to go and, call others, and you felt good about it. And whether or not you brought in any money yourself as a caller, everybody in there could be, hundreds or thousands of people in the room at a Super Sunday event for even a mid-sized federation. Those people all give and are inspired to give.
And their ask is so much more powerful because they're not just saying, "Will you please give to the federation?" It's, "Will you join me in giving to the federation?" Right? I just gave, will you join me as well?
So go back to the development director. Then,
Yeah.
And I'm picturing one specific in my mind right now. I won't mention their name. Who's saying, "Okay, great, that's all really nice, but get a programming person to do that. That's not development. You want rah-rah school, cheerleader stuff, great. But at the end of the day, I'm still pushing the train up the hill." Have you, in all of your campaign experience, seen what makes the difference between the development director pushing and pushing and pushing versus that flywheel effect of donors saying, "We're in, we're being ambassadors, we're moving," and getting that motivation? Where I know the most motivating thing for a development director ahead is when others are saying, "Hey, we're going to carry the ball forward."
Right. And what these campaigns do is, to use your analogy that the development director is pushing a train up the hill, this straps on a jetpack behind them to push up that train, right? People give in the context of community. People give to people.
Say that again.
People give in the context of community.
What does that mean?
Okay? What it means is that people give to people and people give with people. When making a solicitation, you can do a one-to-one solicitation and ask a donor for a gift and talk about the impact of their gift. And that can work, right? But they're doing it through you to the institution. But it's so much more powerful when they're a part of a community of givers. That they're not just the one individual that's giving, but they are a lead gift, or they are one of many individuals who are all banding together. And their gifts are accumulating to something so much more powerful. And so, we see this all the time. This kind of sounds like a dumb thing to say, maybe like a Yogi Berra quote, but it's actually true. Successful campaigns are successful. Unsuccessful campaigns are unsuccessful. Meaning, right?
That is good. When you come to a fork in the road,
right?
take it.
Successful campaigns are successful because you talked about a flywheel, right? Good to great. There's momentum, there's excitement. People want to be a part of a winning team and give to a winning team. It's part of the strategy, actually, why we do a soft launch. Because when you start your 36-hour campaign and you send out your mass emails, and I, as a prospective donor, get one of those emails, and I see that this campaign is at 2% and there are 10 donors, I'm like, I don't want to be the loser who's going to give another $180 to this campaign. But when I see that you're already a third of the way there, and there are donors who've given $5,000 to this campaign, oh, wow, okay, they just started and they've already raised $150,000? That's amazing, right? So, that's so important. And going back to the development director, they can now approach their donors, those 600 donors or 500, whatever it is that they need to approach, and they could do it within this context as opposed to, kind of fighting 500 battles, right? It's a group effort and saying, today's the day, this campaign is happening, right? This is where we are. We have 10 other donors who are doing this. It creates that community of givers around the institution.
Okay, so actually you just helped me understand something.
Okay.
A few things. But one thing which you didn't even say is, I've been saying the director of development's frustrated, struggling. It's not because they have to make 500 solicitations. It's because 500 people complain to them when they make the solicitation. Because what happens? Would you give $100? Well, I'm glad you called, because the second grade teacher, and so now you're asking me for money when the second grade teacher didn't give my kid the grade that I wanted for them on the last test? That's what kills people, right? Because it's not about the money. It's you ask for money and you get complaints when somebody doesn't want to give. And so what you're saying is, on the positive side, it's not about the money, right? It's actually about the community. I say that speaks to me. If you're not so into fundraising and you're still listening to this podcast, that was me. Like in my first year teaching in a school, the development director knocked on the door and said, Rabbi Kislowitz, can I bring so-and-so into the room for a minute and watch your Gemara class? And I said, no, it's really not a good time, and shut the door. That was the number one donor to the school. Literally one of the campuses had their name on it. I don't know if I fully knew that at the time, but I certainly didn't care because, and so I moved a little bit. Like I understand that you actually need to pay teacher salaries, but I'm much more excited by creating community than I am about creating funds.
Yeah.
And what you're saying essentially is, yeah, you can use CauseMatch or another piece of software as we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it online. We're going to pretend we have a match. We're going to pretend we have ambassadors, but really we're doing the same old thing. Or you can say, this is pushing me and lighting up for me three things. Number one, strategy. Right? I'm not just running through this. I'm segmenting, I'm approaching, I'm growing, I'm expanding, I'm thinking about the financial health, not just how much money I've raised right now. And then that gets you, in my mind, to like the real pinnacle of this of we're not raising money because we need money. We're raising money because we need community. And we're raising community because that's our goal. And a good, successful community supports itself. And so that's where, and I heard this actually from Ray Ringo the first time, she started to turn me onto like a little bit more pro fundraising when she said, when you solicit someone, you're actually giving them an opportunity.
Of course.
So I thought that was, a really nice sales line in the beginning, but as we're talking and over the years, it's really crystallized for me that when you solicit someone or when you give them the opportunity to solicit others, what you're saying is you're not a customer, you're a community member. And when we make that switch, we can be successful educationally. And by the way, also have a much more successful campaign.
Yeah, I like that a lot. When we focus on the messaging of a campaign and the fundraising ask of the campaign, what we do is we focus on the mission of the organization and donor impact. Right, and so you're absolutely right that you're creating community that's driving forward the mission of the organization, of the school. And so that's really what the focus is on the campaign, that this campaign we're raising $500,000 so that we can inspire the next generation of community leaders or whatever it might be. I would say that there's a primary goal of campaigns, and then there are two huge additional advantages that these campaigns create. The primary goal, just from the board's perspective, the development director's perspective, is how much are we going to raise, right? Like, they have a bottom line that they need to meet. But the two outcomes that are tremendous and so valuable, number one is the community building that it creates, both in terms of the donors feeling a part of a broader community of givers, as well as the ambassadors, likely the parents, who feel that they are on a winning team. They've invested in the school. They've done some heavy lifting, not just as an individual, but within a community. And so the community building aspect is huge. And the third piece of it is the PR aspect. That the marketing and messaging that goes out to the community that spreads so much further out than the school on its own would be able to do, that's also very, very valuable.
Right, and absolutely. And I'm just going to reframe that as we wrap up. You need money, right? But we don't live to eat, we eat to live. We're not just raising money for the sake of money. And what you're saying, essentially, I would say, again, as a head of school, I would want people to be getting up to their board and saying, we need to raise $2 million this year. Okay, that's really nice. We'll raise $2 million. But we need to build a community this year. We need to build the school's reputation this year because that's what we're here for. So it really is all within the context of the mission. And if you do that, you ultimately will raise the money because a successful campaign is a successful campaign.
Right.
The first half of that sentence in my mind is successful in terms of the principles of education and what you're trying to accomplish and your mission. And so for every head of school, and there are many who are not so comfortable with the financial side, I think what we'll wrap up with in saying to them is, it's not about finances any more than learning is about grades, right? You are building community. You're implementing your mission, and these are some frameworks in which to do it. And, I'll close by thanking you for your time and also noting I do believe CauseMatch is one of the places that does this right, that gets the real content and strategy and meaning behind it, and it's not just about like, hey, let's get some more money in. And I'm hopeful that you guys listening will try it. And please let us know, agree, disagree. Most importantly, try it out and let us know how it goes. You can reach Jeremy Stern at LinkedIn, as well as any other good ways.
Jeremy at CauseMatch.com.
Jeremy at CauseMatch.com. As always, reach me, Barry Kislowitz, at LinkedIn, Leadership Lenses on Substack, or on our website, KislowitzConsulting.com.